What's up, YouTube family? You are back on the other side with yours truly, Mike G. And today you're going to hear the story of one of the most beloved and important figures in MMA history. He is the babysitter to the stars. Ladies and gentlemen, Burt Watson. How are you doing, Burt?
Oh, I'm trying to make it, baby. How about yourself, Mike?
I'm doing well. I'm honored. I'm nervous. I'm shaking. I got goosebumps. I'm so excited to talk to you, and I can't wait to share what you have to say with the people in my community.
No, I appreciate you having me on, man. It's always an honor when people think enough of you to sit down and talk to you. And think it's an honor when people think you have enough to say that somebody else might want to listen to.
Yeah. Well, I could listen to you talk all day.
And just so you know, that's Snapple lemonade juice and not liquor.
Well, I'm rocking the official drink of Bare Knuckle Fighting Championships, Bucked Up Energy Drink.
Okay, all right. I've done a few
All
of
right.
those.
They're not bad. If you don't mind, tell us a little bit about where you were born and growing up and what family life was like.
Wow, that's well, it's I was born in Charleston, South Carolina, way back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
My mom my mom is from Charleston, South Carolina, and my dad is Jamaican. So those two kind of got together in
Mm-hmm.
South Carolina, and my mom's family, should I say. And we left. I was I got a birthday next year. I'll be 76, bro, and proud.
Yeah.
So and I say that to say we left South Carolina in 1952. And I know if I say 1952, some of your audience is going to start trying to do that math in their head. So I'm saving them from doing that math. I'm just letting them know right away. Okay. But
Understood.
our family moved to Philadelphia back in the day, and I grew up in Philadelphia, went to high school in Philadelphia, spent all of my childhood in Philadelphia, which was awesome,
Mm-hmm.
and became a part of that Philadelphia culture, which eventually, and I will take the mantle for the city of Philadelphia, which eventually became the boxing mecca of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of when I say that because everybody says that about their city, but Philadelphia has a history,
Mm-hmm.
not only with Joe Frazier, but Meldrick Taylor and Bernard Hopkins and Burt Cooper,
Mm-hmm.
and way back to Gypsy Joe Harris, which is way back before your time, and Joey Giardello, which is from New Jersey, but through Philadelphia. But Philadelphia has a very, very, mighty Ivan Robinson. Philadelphia has a history of boxing, and I came up through that time and that time frame. But it's funny because two things that you learn in Philly.
Mm-hmm.
Number one was staying in school, and number two, you learn how to box. You learn those two things right off the jump street. So everybody from Philly could box, and that's probably where a lot of it came from because everybody. I mean, that was in your DNA. But I grew up in Philly, and grew up with very, very, and not until I sat down and wrote my book and had time to think about it and concentrate did I realize how much of an influence my family and my
Mm-hmm.
mom and my dad had on my career. And my mom made all of my decisions, going to college, where I went to college,
Mm-hmm.
how I went to college. Here I was, a street kid from Philadelphia. In my book, I say hood rat, but,
I
but a
understand.
street kid from Philly ending up going to school in Scottsbluff, Nebraska.
That's different.
Now, How the world does, and I'm talking about I'm talking about 1967.
Hmm.
You know, when the world was a whole different kind of place.
Yeah.
You know, and two different places for people of color. So,
Hmm.
you know, going out to Scottsbluff, Nebraska was, but I did that and went out there and matriculated and made it through that and ended up in the Marine Corps and ended up in New York from the Marine Corps. But my life had a journey that, you know, I'm not only very proud of, but one that I can really talk about
Hmm.
and sit down and sit back and see how it helped to help me to navigate through
Hmm.
through life, you know. But between my mom, my college, and the Marine Corps, that all made BURT Watson. And you know, to this day, it's still there, you know.
Absolutely.
And yes,
Thank you very much for your service. I wanted to say that before I
thank
forgot.
you.
How were you introduced to, other than growing up in Philly in the streets? How were you introduced to, I guess, professional combat sports?
It was a chance meeting, a fluke, total
Okay.
fluke. First time I met Joe Frazier was walking down the streets of Manhattan. I worked in Manhattan and I'm walking down the streets of Manhattan. Now, I was always a fan.
Hmm.
March 8th, 1971, which was the big fight with Muhammad Ali at Madison Square Garden.
Hmm.
I was just about out of the Marine Corps and got to to see that fight, which made me a boxing fan and made me an automatic fan of
Hmm.
Smoking Joe Frazier because of the fact that he was from Philadelphia. And then when I read a little, tell you a little nugget, my
Okay.
brother, when I read a little, I also read that he and I grew up in the same town, darn near.
Okay.
Not that far away from each other. We were
Hmm.
almost walking distance from each other.
Wow.
And I never knew that till I started reading his history. So in reading that and reading the history, you automatically, I mean, if you got two guys that are on the biggest stage in the world and they're always in the media, and you read one and you read where one is exactly where you from and you went to this,
Hmm.
he's going to kind of become
Yeah.
your guy.
Absolutely.
So he did because we were both from Philadelphia and both from the same place in South Carolina. Which what are the chances of that happening? And I
Slim.
had a chance meeting once with him in Manhattan, on the streets in a car accident. Not that we were in, but one happening that stopped us to meet. And I'd say about 4 years later or so, I met him again in Philadelphia. Another chance meeting. My niece got married. Joe Frazier had a limousine service. My mom, a friend gave her a present as a limousine service for my niece's wedding. And Joe Frazier, Joe Frazier was a tinkerer. Joe Frazier was one of those guys that, we'd get in the car and go someplace and we would drive.
Hmm.
And I would tell you honestly, Joe Frazier spent the first half an hour in the car taking apart the glove compartment. Okay. Taking it apart and putting it back together, or taking what was out of it and putting it, but that's all he did, as I
Okay.
did the driving. When he got tired of driving, or I got tired of him driving, so he was that kind of a guy, and very much a tinkerer, and very much a guy that stayed on top of things that maybe he didn't need to stay on top of. He
Okay.
had a limousine service. Came in one day, and back in those days we had clipboards, and again, You see that book back there, being Burt
Hmm.
Watson. All of this is in that book, so I'm not going to tell you all of it. But but he, picks up the clipboard and see
Hmm.
that somebody didn't do or wasn't there for their schedule to go pick up my niece for her wedding.
Hmm.
So guess who got in the car and drove that car? Smoker Joe
Yep.
Frazier.
Awesome.
Drove up to my house, got out of the car. The rest is history.
That's amazing.
The rest is in
Wow.
that book. And here I go again with that shameless plug. The rest is in
No.
that book, Being Burt Watson, written by Burt Watson. But it's a crazy story,
Yeah.
but a true story.
That's
And
wild.
from that point on, Joe and I became friends. And I say became friends because Joe took me in on a whole different kind of level, trust level.
Hmm.
So it was an automatic friendship because he took me in and invited me to the gym and took me, to different places with him. And every time we go someplace, he'd push me in front of him. And, I had no idea what the heck I was doing. But that showed me the kind of friendship he had and confidence he had
Hmm.
in the relationship. And we automatically clicked.
That's
And, and,
amazing.
and that just went on throughout, our time together. And I mean, like, stably from like 1982 or so, or 83 on through till about, I'd say about 2006, or something like that. But we were road dogs.
That's awesome. I can't imagine. Um,
Yes.
who is Butch Lewis?
Whoa. Well, now back in the day,
Hmm.
there were I'd say three major promoters in combat sports,
Hmm.
specifically boxing.
Okay.
Number one was Don King. Number two was Bob Arum, and number three was Butch Lewis.
Okay.
And Butch Lewis came up on the scene because back in those days, Butch Lewis had a connection with Michael Spinks,
Hmm.
which also gave him a connection with Leon Spinks.
Hmm.
And we all know what Leon Spinks did.
Yeah.
Leon Spinks had 7 fights and fought that young man on your shirt there and beat him. So he automatically became a household and a worldwide name.
Hmm.
And Butch Lewis was their promoter.
Okay.
So that's how Butch Lewis came up on the scene with his promotion. And initially, it was Michael Spinks that he had, and then Leon came along. And ironically, not ironically, because and I take that back, but both men, Leon Spinks and Michael Spinks, became heavyweight champions of the
Hmm.
world. Both of them.
Hmm.
And both of them were pretty good at what they do and their technical skill level, and you know until uh, Michael Spinks's fight with Mike Tyson, which was not a great fight. But and then Leon Spinks, once he beat Muhammad Ali with only 7 fights, and then went on and losing his fights as he did. But those two, brothers, it was the first time in my career or in my knowledge that two brothers became heavyweight champion of the world so
Hmm.
close to each other.
Yeah.
And Butch Lewis was their promoter.
Okay.
And that was his claim. That was his claim to fame. And he had a couple of other guys in between that were, that kind of made some waves, but they made waves because they were with Butch Lewis behind the shield of the Spinks brothers.
Gotcha. Okay. I read once that people have had a hard time coming up with a title for what you have, the job that you've served in combat sports. At one point in time, you realized, and this may be a direct quote from you, a disconnect between fighter and promotion.
Yes.
How did you insert yourself into that disconnect?
Well, and people, great question, Mike. People have a hard time identifying what it is that I do, and that's because I created what I do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There was no job description as to what BURT WATSON did. BURT WATSON did what he knew he had to do and created the way to do it and how to do it, which I will 100% go on record to say to this day that a lot of boxing and the UFC and some other mixed martial arts promotions that I work with are still, they do things the same way. And I'm gonna mention the name here. I'm too old to care, so I'm gonna mention the name anyway.
Okay.
I did a fight with Don King way back in the day, and back in those days, you were getting $30 a round for a 4-round fight. Do that math, son. And then it escalated, or it increased to $50 a round for a 4-round fight, which was big money.
Yeah. I still take that.
Imagine, Mike, getting $50 a round. If you fought a 4-round fight, you got $200.
Yeah.
Now, we had a fight, and the only thing I don't remember was the fighter's name. But this fighter fought his fight and fought his ass off and lost his fight. Now, also back in the day, and when I say back in the day, I'm going maybe 85, 1985, or so, or maybe a little earlier. But those days, not only did you fight your fight, but you had to get, and you still have to. There is a plethora of medicals that you have to get today to qualify and be able to fight in a professional boxing, MMA, or whatever. You got to do medicals. And it was eye test, head test, ear test, EKG, EEG, blood work, all of those things that you had to take. Back in the day, you could get most of those things under one test. Today, they're all individual tests, and they all cost a different amount of money. Well, back then, in the 80s or so, if a guy went and did his test, it would probably cost him maybe $60 to $80.
Okay.
To have those tests done. Now, I had a fighter that fought a 4-round fight for $50, which means he got $200, and then he had to turn in his receipts for his medicals, which he had to pay for, which was $80 out of $200. Do that math.
Yeah. That ain't right.
That fighter came to me and he said, Mr. Bird, he said, I knew he fought his ass off. And he said, Mr. Bird, he said, I just went through this with that fight, and I got $110, $120. I don't even have enough money to get home. Hardly. So I ran my hand in my pocket, and I think I had maybe $60, maybe, that I had on me at the time, and I gave it to him. And that fighter was so happy, but so distraught that he had to do that, but he was
Yeah.
so happy. And I thought that was disgraceful.
Yeah.
That fighter fought his ass off, got his money, and somebody said, "Give me $60 of that for your medicals." And I thought that was horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at that point, I said to myself, you know what? I am never going to let that happen to another fighter again as long as I'm working a fight. At that point, Mike, I made up in my mind that the one thing I was going to do was to look out and protect the interest of the fighters. And that's exactly what I did. And in order for me to do that, I needed to be more involved in the overall coordinating of everything.
Yeah.
And I did that. Coordinating of his air and ground transportation, his flight, his hotel, his medicals, his meal, his food money, his ticket money, his equipment, his mouthpiece, all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't hard for me to do, but I got involved in all of it because you never know how much you don't know until you need to know it, baby.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a birdism.
That's nice.
That's a birdism, okay? And knowing those things made it very easy for me to address those things.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I said, you never know how much you don't know till you need to know it. So I got to know all of the angles and all the aspects of how things worked and how we put things together, and and how it affected a fighter, his performance, and his satisfaction with the promoter.
Sure.
So that's how I started to create a game plan of how what I needed to work with fighters and what I needed to do to make sure, because from that point on, when that fighter got that $120 and that's all the money he had, and he had to drive home, and I said, I will never let that happen to another one. Then I had to make sure that fighters were taken care of. But then also, I had the task of making sure that I didn't go too deep in the promoter's pocket, because then I'd be looking for a job. Okay, because they were definitely, they were looking at all their ducats and making sure everything was in a row and lined up, and that it didn't cost. So I had to figure out a way, and I eventually figured it out by going to different places and different, and instead of going to a place that everybody was sent to, I found a different way to get, and a cheaper way to get it. And eventually it worked out because different organizations started coming in to the boxing world and becoming a part of one organization, became a part of another organization. So it became a part of the format. But we were roughing it from the beginning. And guys, now, granted, if and the pay was, and I won't say how much, but I'll just say his name. I did 7 fights for Mike Tyson, and everybody know what Mike Tyson made. Early on in that, in his career and in those fights, guys were still making $50 a round. So, and I'm talking about pro debut guys that were just coming out and was fighting a 4-round fight. But then you had, those were undercard guys. That's why they were called undercards. And guys were still making that kind of money. And then you had, Mike Tyson and his co-main event or whoever making a different kind of money, but then guys making that kind of money, and I kind of started to get a little more involved and had nothing to do with the pay scale and the amount of money that fighters were making, but I had a hell of a lot to do with the way fighters were treated.
Awesome.
The way fighters, because I write and I'm writing now in my book with this, again, with a shameless plug. During the course of that, my focus is mindset, game plan, and commitment. And those three things are things that you need to succeed in sport, but are also things you need to succeed in life. So my goal was to make sure that those things were in place for a fighter. To take that walk from that dressing room to that cage, to that ring, to that octagon, to that dojo, whatever. He needed the right mindset, a game plan, and a commitment to get in there and do that. And if he didn't leave that dressing room right, he wasn't right.
Yeah.
Trust me.
Yeah.
And if he walked into that dressing room and that dressing room wasn't right, he wasn't right. And I knew that. If he walked into that dressing room and, how can I put this? You walk into a dressing room and your girlfriend's ex is in the same dressing room as you, how you gonna feel?
Not like following a game plan.
I'm done.
Game plan's out the window.
Out the window. So I had to make, and that's a bit, but that's BURT Watson. What the hell?
I get it.
I made sure, Mike, that his ex-girlfriend's boyfriend was not sharing the same dressing room. Now, to take that to another level, I sat down sometimes and did my homework. I made sure that a guy was not in the dressing room that somebody that he was going to have his next fight with. Now, it didn't always work, but you know what? I made it a point to feel that out.
Yeah.
Okay. Or to feel it out that he's not in the dressing room with a guy that just whooped his ass last week.
Yeah.
So those were the kind of things that I did to heart and that I paid attention to, and it worked.
It worked very well.
Thus, babysitter to the stars.
Yes, sir.
And now, I'm not there per se now, but no one, and the one thing I will say about my man Dana White never, ever, ever came to me to change my game plan. Never came to me to say, we need to do this a different way.
That's awesome.
He always made sure that I was okay so that everybody else was okay. Except that one time that I left. And that one time that I left was not on Dana White at all.
Right.
But he never wavered. And still to this day, never wavered. And always let me have my say so that, now I couldn't be wrong. Okay. I had to be right. But never wavered, never came in to say, you know what, Bert, let me suggest that you do. Never. But not only him, but most of the time, everybody kind of went along with what I might have, what I was putting down.
Right.
But never, never did I ever think that I was going to not listen to a fighter and what he wanted and what he needed. I don't care how minute it was. Because fighters and professional athletes have a way of putting things on their head that make no sense at the wrong time. Okay. You know, totally at the wrong time. And it's sometimes I would sit and say, son, why are you worried about that? Or I would say, son, talk to me and tell me why that's an issue.
Right.
And then they would think about it and couldn't tell me, so they wouldn't bring it. So then they couldn't give me an answer. So then I would say, well, you know, if it's taking you that long, then we need to move on. But anything, you know, that some things didn't make. I mean, you know, the room was too cold. And I knew damn well the room wasn't too cold because it was 130 degrees in there. You know, or he didn't like the gloves he had. Now, what I always did was I always made sure fights, and let me know when I'm rambling too damn much, baby.
No, you're fine, man.
A fight is on Saturday. Fighters get in usually on Monday or Tuesday for a Saturday fight. I don't want them in there on Wednesday. That's too late. So a fighter would come in, and the first thing I would do would greet him and listen to him and have a conversation, because I want to know what you brought with you. You see here?
The mindset. Yeah.
I want to know what you brought with you. So I have a conversation, but I have that conversation without telling them that's why. But I do. And I sit down and I have that conversation with them. And we sit down and we talk, you know, about, and then I sit down and listen to some things that maybe a bit of an issue with them, or some things that may concern them. And for the most part, sometimes it's way over here. And but you know what? I sit down and I listen, and then I put that on a plate as a part of my meal. Because if one person is thinking about it, it may not be the next two, but one of the next 10 is thinking about the same thing.
Yep.
And it may make no sense to me, but to him.
Yeah.
You know, I know fighters, Mike, that won't put their left shoes on before they put their right shoes on.
I believe that.
And that's the truth.
Yeah.
I can name names. I know fighters that won't work out in the same gear that they train in.
Superstitious.
I don't know what you call it, but whatever it is, I'm good with it.
Yeah.
If that's how you feel.
Yeah.
You know, that listen to certain music that they won't listen to the same. You know, that come in the dressing room a certain way. Won't come in a certain time unless it's BURT time.
How did you go from boxing to meeting the Fertittas and going to work for the UFC?
I started doing boxing locally, Philadelphia, Atlantic City, which was a big deal because Atlantic City was as big or bigger than Las Vegas.
Yeah.
But back in the day.
Yeah.
And I did a fight, and I'm always not 100% on this, but I'm gonna throw it. It was I knew Oscar De La Hoya was involved, and I think it was Arturo Gatti. I'm not sure, but
Okay.
I did that fight in Atlantic at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, and I was the coordinator. Burt Watson putting Burt Watson stuff together, the scale, all that stuff, and I did that. And I did a show with a guy by the name of a promoter by the name of Bernie Dillon, who was promoting at the time and had that big fight. And we were in Vegas, and he was in Vegas for a while and got to know everybody. So in between the fight and the weigh-in, he came to me, this guy, Bernie Dillon. He said, Bert, he said, I got a guy who's getting ready to do something. He said me he told me what it was, but I forgot what the hell he said. I got this guy getting ready to do something, and he needs a coordinator. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's an event, and he needs a coordinator to do the event. So I said to him, I said, well, you know what? I don't have time to meet with the guy now because I'm getting ready for the weigh-in, but after we can meet in your office. And so he set it up to meet the guy after the weigh-in or during sometime he set up. So I'm in his office, and the guy comes walking in his office, and the guy was Dana White. Need I say more?
Dana with hair.
With hair. Came in and explained exactly what it was he was trying to do. And, this was in October, August or October of 1999. And he said, and I'm looking for a venue, and I plan to do something the first of the year. And I didn't know what the hell he was talking about. So I said to him, my words exactly, you pay me and respect me, you got me.
Yeah.
And you know what? He said, okay, that's easy. And this was, I think, October, like I said, August, something like that, of 1999. And he was having his first event in 2000. And he called me, and I was doing Victor Rabinales, and I think Zab Judah was on there. I was doing another card, and he called me. He was going to have something in the next following week. I went to Atlantic City. Now, the first event he was trying to do in Vegas or someplace else. And I didn't know what MMA was. I knew Bruce Lee and Bruce Leroy. Okay?
Right.
That's what I knew. MMA, had no idea. But what I did know, and I found out that once he started putting this out on the table, nobody wanted to be bothered with it. The commissions didn't want to sanction it. And they were like, and then I started seeing it, and I'm like, damn, why do they not want to? But I didn't understand why. Nobody wanted to sanction it. And then he finally got a date in Atlantic City. And he came to me and said, I got a date in Atlantic City, and this is the date. And are you available? And it was UFC 30.
Wow.
And I went in and did that. And we ended up doing the next 5 fights in the last UFC 30, 31, 32, 33, I think, to 34, I think, in Atlantic City. And then it started, when Atlantic City started doing it, then they started getting a little more feedback, other places and then we started going around other places. But that was the very first one, UFC 30 and 2000.
Okay.
And I'm gonna tell you something, Mike.
Okay.
That was my first time seeing MMA. And I'm looking and wonder, what the hell did I get myself into? Because I'm used to boxing.
Sure.
And you know what boxing is, right?
Yeah.
Boom, boom, boom,
Yeah.
boom. That wasn't that. That was these guys, boom, rear naked choke,
Foot to
flip,
the head.
throw, foot to the head. And when it came to stand up, it was like this.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm used to this. And I'm like, what the heck? But then eventually stand up in MMA went from this
Mm-hmm.
to this.
Yeah. You know, it's almost like you were describing Keith Hackney. I remember Keith Hackney, early UFC fighter. He fought with it was called White Tiger Kimpo Karate, and he had like that's how he fought. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking
So
about.
you know I ain't lying. You know I ain't lying.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah,
And
Keith Hackney.
I went from that, it went to this. It went to that.
Is that
And
you, Bert?
huh?
Did you have some influence in that?
Well, you know what? It was I'll tell you what happened. When I saw it, I spoke on it.
Mm-hmm.
I said, man, they gotta learn how to box. I said they gotta learn what they need to do is go to a boxing gym.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the first person I said that to, I said it to Madeline and Evan Tanner.
Okay.
And I said, that is not gonna work.
No.
And you know what? Eventually they started going to boxing gyms and learning how to box. And now when
There's
you
some
see what
fine
I see now,
boxers in MMA.
but they was cat fighting,
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
and it was, but I enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
And never once did anybody come to me to tell me how, who, what, where, when, and why. Never. All they did, they gave them to me
Mm-hmm.
and left them alone. And the fighters were all mine. And
Yep.
everything they wanted and anything they wanted, it was always, they came right to me, which was good
Yeah.
because that gave me, as I said, it gave me a position where I always want to put my hands on everything.
Mm-hmm.
If as a coordinator, I think that's one of the things you need to do
Sure.
is to be able to put your hands on everything, but also know what the hell you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And as I went along, I was learning.
Right.
Didn't tell anybody that, but I was learning, and it was good because I didn't have to. Whatever I had to change, I was the only person that knew I had to change
Right.
because I didn't have to go check with anybody to see how to change it,
Mm-hmm.
and it became a part of the culture. It became a part of operational procedure, and it became a part of the way that they still do certain things to this day.
Mm-hmm.
There's two
Talk.
things. Go ahead.
You had mentioned changes. I was going to say, talking about changes, what are the biggest changes you've seen in boxing and MMA over the years?
I think the for for boxing and MMA, the changes, number one is that the implosion and the fan acceptance of MMA has gone through the roof,
Mm-hmm.
where it's gone another direction for boxing.
Yeah.
But I saw that happening a while back. But MMA is at the top of the food chain.
Mm-hmm.
It's the biggest, fastest growing sport in the world. Whereas boxing has, it has waned a little bit, and I don't know whether it's because of the talent. There's not a lot of big names there. Not that when there are big names, but not a lot of big names.
Mm-hmm.
Where in MMA there are a lot of big names, but now they don't need big names because they've made a big product.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the changes I've seen is the shift of the popularity. And then I remember that boxing was Showtime, HBO, ESPN, USA Today.
Mm-hmm.
All of those networks, except maybe ESPN, I think. But all of those other networks no longer do that.
Yeah.
And got rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
But MMA somehow didn't need that. And stayed away from HBO and Showtime and those network platforms and survived and decided we're gonna do our own thing.
Yeah.
And they did it. And at the time they just kind of washed their hands of it. So that was one of the biggest things that I saw. And as that happened, I will say this, and I'm saying this from my heart as a boxing guy. After the era of Mike Tyson, Oscar De La Hoya, Bernard Hopkins, Meldrick Taylor, Tito Trinidad, Julio Cesar Chavez, Christy Martin, and after though that era, I'm trying to think, was there another after that?
Not like that.
When those names went away, there was no feeder system, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
There was no feeder system to fill those names in, to replace those names. They couldn't go to the feeder system and pull another De La Hoya out with a different name.
Right.
Or pull another Mike Tyson out with a different name. I mean, you got some good names now, now.
Sure.
Joshua, you got the heavyweight champion, and Danny Garcia from Philly. But they're coming around now, but the low from when there wasn't to now was so big that
playing catch up.
Yeah, and man, you can't. It's tough to do that. It's hard.
The era of De La Hoya Trinidad is probably my favorite era in boxing history. And there you could name names of boxers from that area from all different weight classes. There were 10 guys, 12 guys per weight class that were superstars, that were incredible, that could win a fight.
Mark Brillin, Turo Gaddy, Michael Moore,
Fernando Vargas,
Witherspoon.
Yeah.
Pernell Whitaker.
Costa Zoo.
Kostya.
Forever.
Zab Judah.
Yeah.
But, there was a whole and for me to know that, and you know what? And I think about it, out of all those we just named, and all those we probably could name, there's only one fighter that I never worked with. Because Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran, Macho Camacho, I'm naming some we didn't name. The only fighter I never worked with was Lennox Lewis. Now, you name one. Anyone. And I've worked with them.
Wow.
Anyone. Just throw a name out. One way or another.
Prince Nassim Hamed.
Done. Twice.
Jermaine Taylor.
Twice. In fact, was it Jermaine that fought Shane Mosley, or was it somebody else that fought Shane Mosley in Indiana?
I don't remember.
I don't know. I don't. But in when you do a fight, I had a minimum of 10 fights on a card. That was a minimum. Very seldom you went to a fight with less than 10 fights on a card. That's 20 fighters.
Mm-hmm.
I worked with all of them.
Yeah.
Let me give you a figure, son.
Okay.
And I want you to put this up on your when you print this out, you can put this up.
Okay.
I worked in my career since 1983.
Mm-hmm.
I've worked 403 fights. I have walked 8,069 fighters from the dressing room to the ring, the cage, the octagon, and the dojo since 1983 or 84.
Wow.
8,069. That's a real figure, son.
Wow.
If you average 403 at a minimum of 10 fights, 20 fights, do 20 times 403. Do that math.
That's amazing.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I've worked with all of them. Everybody. Foreman, Michael Moore, Tim Witherspoon. It's and female fighters. Ronda Rousey, Layla Ali, Christy Martin. On all eras, at all those times, but have enjoyed every bit of it, my man.
What has been the main motivating factor in your career, and the thing that has kept you motivated throughout it?
The fact that, number one, I was always proud that the fighters and people around me respected me enough to get close enough to me to feel a comfort level with me with what I did. Now, I always believed that if you gave people a comfort level with you, then they got a comfort level with the things that you said.
Sure. Yeah.
Or whatever you told them to do. And I was always, that was always big for me, that they felt that way. And it was genuine. I had one or two kerfluffles, which I will not name because he's in prison. Now, when you get off, you try to think of who that is, okay?
Okay.
But for the most part, everybody, man, Anderson Silva, I had a fairly decent relationship with most, and that I remember more than anything, and that more than anything stayed with me and that I cherished. And I won't say contributions to, but my working with and my longevity with women in combat sports. Plain and simple. To see that and to have been a part of that, of women in combat sports, when I was always told and always heard that would never happen.
Dana
And
told
it
us.
wouldn't, and that it would never make sense.
Mm-hmm.
You know, women in combat sports, women in boxing, Layla Ali is only fighting because of her dad. Yeah, Layla Ali was 25-0 because of her dad.
No.
Shit,
Mm-mm.
25-0. Christy Martin lost 3,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Come on,
Yeah.
you know, Ronda Rousey. You know, and I got a story that again on my shameless plug. You get this book and you read Being BURT WATSON. It's in the book. Fighters, I tell you, come in on a Monday or Tuesday for a Saturday fight, and I sat down and talked to them, talked with them, and I sized them for their gloves. And when I sized them, that number one made me know I had it, and number two, I had what was called the BURT roll. I was probably the only person. No, I won't say that. I won't say I was the only person that knew how, but I was the only person that rolled the fighter's gloves.
Okay.
In MMA for them. And I did the same thing in boxing, but a different way. But in MMA, I would roll. If you ever get your hands on a pair of MMA gloves again, try to roll them up.
Okay.
And see how. So, because MMA gloves are like this.
Mm-hmm.
When I roll them up and you got them at the fight, you got them like this.
Mm-hmm.
So I would always roll and I would test. For some reason, I didn't do that with Ronda Rousey. And I got a surprise that I wasn't looking for. And it's in this book. But you got to read it. You got to read it. It was one of the funniest things that ever.
Okay.
But I always did that to make sure, as we said earlier, how I took care of fighters to make sure everything, mouthpiece, cups, workout equipment, I checked everything. I checked the mats that they worked out on to see how they smell. Yes, sir.
I believe you. I believe you.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. And if it didn't smell right to me, you know what I did? And I found out the hard way, you don't clean mats with water and bleach.
What do you use?
I use just regular water and some kind of maybe a light dish detergent,
Okay.
you know, or something like that I would use. But if it was only water, but enough to clean it, so that the next, because if you ever walk into a training room after maybe, you know, if you get a fight, and I had training rooms red and blue, you usually had maybe at a minimum 8 guys in a room. Each guy had 3 people when they came to train. So imagine that. So you get 6 guys or 5 guys at a time training on a mat. Imagine how can I say this nicely? The perspiration and the aroma and that kind of stuff on the mat.
Yeah.
BURT WATSON always waited to a certain hour at night and he cleaned them. Every day. Every day.
That's a good.
Every day. I don't care where I was or who was with me. That was in my game plan to do that. And that's a system that I worked on. Now, whether they still do it now or not, yeah. But certain things, you know, you and I were talking about certain things that I did. And I say this all the time, but I'll say it in yours as well. You know, the way they grease fighters up at the cage and the way they do that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Red and blue tape.
Awesome.
Plain and simple. Now, very true in Pride or Japan,
Mm-hmm.
they used to use pink tape,
Mm-hmm.
but no blue tape, just pink. But red and blue tape in MMA and then boxing,
That's Bert.
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Hell yeah,
Yes,
man.
sir. Without a doubt. Without a doubt. And I'll challenge anybody to that. And I can tell you the fight I did it in and the date I did it. And I went to Dana White with it, said, you know what? I'm going to change that tape because I can't tell who's who when that camera's on and these guys are up against that cage and all I
Mm-hmm.
see is white tape and arms.
Yeah.
Unless it was a white fighter and a black fighter. You didn't know who was who. Okay? So I changed it.
What do you hope your legacy is in combat sports?
I just hope that people don't forget me in combat sports.
Not possible.
Don't forget that I was around in combat sports. That I cared about combat sports and the athletes, and that I had a legacy. Not only, I mean, I had a legacy, so I left a legacy.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that I was a part of combat sports that for the betterment of combat
Mm-hmm.
sports, and not that I was just in it because I'm not a fighter,
Mm-hmm.
so I can't go on my record. The record I got is 403, 8,069. but which is better than anybody else's record that I know.
Yeah.
And I don't know of another coordinator who can say that.
Me
But
either.
no, not that many. But I, you know, just the fact that I was in combat sports and I contributed to the progression of it. I contributed to the way fighters were treated. I changed the landscape of the thought process of how they were treated because I'm big on that. And that I respected everybody that got in front of me. Plain and simple.
That's awesome. Treat people how you want to be treated. I live by that every day, man.
100%. And my emphasis on working with women in combat sports and how the landscape, how that happened and how I work with different people. That's kind of why I sat down and wrote my book. Because you asked how I want to be remembered. I also want people to be able to read what I want to be remembered. At least to pick it up and even if you weren't a part of it, you can read through it and say, damn.
Mm-hmm.
It's I go over some things where working with fighters in a hotel, in a workout room, they stand up
Mm-hmm.
and they're punching. I can't tell you how many hotels I've gone to that somebody put a hole in the wall.
I'm sure. I'm sure plenty.
Okay. And you know where that hole in the wall came from.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody charging somebody and up against that wall. Bam! Yep. And I get a phone call. Ding, ding. Mr. Watson, can we get you down in ballroom C? And when I walk in the ballroom, when I see more than two people, I know what's wrong.
Yep.
And I walk in there and there's a hole in the wall or the openings are off track, where somebody done ran up against that wall and knocked it off track. But those are the things, and so I found a way to get around that.
Mm-hmm.
I got extra mats, and I put mats up
Mm-hmm.
against the wall. Even though mats made it easier for them to go harder,
Right.
I also put a sign up. Stay off this damn wall.
I believe that too.
All around, stay off this damn wall.
That's awesome, man.
So but
I'm at a point in the interview where I like to ask some personal questions, and I don't mean like what size shoe you wear or that kind of thing. These are just kind of goofy questions that I want to know the answer to, and I promise you've never been asked before.
Okay.
If you don't mind, pick one and why. The first question is pulled pork or brisket?
Well, brisket, because I don't like pork. I don't really eat red meat, but if I had to take a choice, it would be brisket.
Okay. Both in their prime, Joe Frazier or Mike Tyson?
In their prime?
Mm-hmm.
Woo! You go!
I knew this would be hard for you to answer.
Joe Frazier.
Absolutely. There you go. All right. Coffee or energy drink?
Coffee.
All right.
I don't like the taste of energy drinks.
They all taste like the Flintstone vitamins my parents made me eat when I was a kid.
Yuck.
Exactly. Okay. This is a big one. Eagles or Steelers?
After 2 nights ago, wow. Even though they're a big disappointment to me right now, I'm gonna have to go with the Eagles. Last season they went 10-1 and wet the bed.
Mm-hmm.
Two nights ago they lost to a team that I could have beat. They lost to the Falcons 21-20, 21-22 or something crazy, but I gotta stick with them.
All righty. Chuck Norris or Bruce Lee?
Bruce Lee.
All right. It's your birthday, and you can have anyone ever sing happy birthday to you. Who's singing?
Sade.
Nice.
You notice I didn't even have to think about that. Sade.
Sade, yeah.
Yeah, my favorite.
All right. As I told you, I have something special for you that I've never done before.
Yes, sir.
And it'll take a tiny bit of time, but I really hope you appreciate it. I reached out to 13 professional or former professional fighters to get messages for you or to bring up stories that you might enjoy. So
wow.
I'm going to start at the top, and some of this makes no sense to me because they just said, say this and see what his response is.
Wow.
So the first guy I spoke to, Matt Hughes, he told me to call you good old Elmer.
Elmer.
Okay. Where'd that come from, man?
Well, Elmer is the glue.
Okay.
And I'm the glue that holds it together.
Awesome. That's great, man. I kept trying to figure out how Elmer Fudd, from Daffy Duck.
No, Elmer is the glue, and I'm the glue that holds it together.
Awesome. Wow. I can't wait.
Wow.
The next guy I spoke to, Spencer the King Fisher. He said you were the best part of the whole UFC experience.
Wow, Spencer. Wow.
Yeah, I spoke to Kevin Iole. he wanted me to tell you a huge hello, and he loves you.
Wow.
The next guy was Alan the Talent Belcher. I interviewed him yesterday and talked to him about you.
Wow.
He
Wow.
said you were so selfless, and if a fighter ever had any issue, you would take it and put it on yourself, and had a great character.
Wow. That's kind of, man, you're getting me with this. You're getting me with this.
That was my goal, Bert.
Wow. Wow.
All right. The next person, Sean Salmon, said you
Wow.
love the fighters more than anyone else,
Yes, sir.
and he still gets chills if he hears your voice saying "We rollin'."
We rolling, baby. Ha 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 ha. Sean. Wow.
All right. The next guy I talked to, inaugural UFC lightweight champion Jens Pulver, says hello. He loves you, and you are one of his favorite people on the planet.
Jens Pope. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Wow. Where the hell did you dig these guys, man?
I'm a passionate fan who cares about helping people, brother.
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Um,
Wow.
I spoke with Chuck Liddell the other day. He said you were so good at what you did that he didn't know how the UFC continued without you.
Wow. Wow. So, wow.
Yeah.
That's an honor, man.
Mm-hmm.
That's an
Yeah,
honor.
you deserve it, Bert. I've got about 5 or 6 more.
Okay.
I spoke to Drew the Massacre McFedries. He said you were one of the greatest men he had ever been around and had amazing energy.
Wow.
I also spoke with Gray the Bully Maynard. He
Wow.
said you were the most passionate person he has ever been around in his entire life, and then no one
Wow.
else even came close.
Wow. Wow.
Next on the list is Gabe Rudiger.
Damn.
And he told me a little story, and I didn't get all of it. I hope you can fill in the blanks. He and Mighty Mouse at one point in time were trying to get some sort of organic fancy chicken or something like that, and couldn't figure out how to do it. You took over and got them what they needed, and Gabe Rudiger told me to tell you thank you for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did.
He still remembers the chicken.
Yeah. You know, I always tell you it's not always the smarter man who knows it all, but the man who knows where to find it.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Wow.
Last night, I had a phone call with Mark the Hammer Coleman. He
Wow.
just gave me a few words, and he said that you would know what this means. He said that he has light balls and can lose 10 pounds instantly. I don't know what that means, but he said you would.
Yeah, you know what? He has a way, man. I don't know how the hell he does it, but he gets on that damn scale and takes 5 pounds off without getting off of it. I don't know how the hell he does it. And he told me it was his balls. He told me. Yeah. I still don't know how he does that, but he has a way of leaning to a certain way, and he goes from like 210 to 205. Yeah.
Yeah, light balls.
Uh,
All right, 2 more. The next guy I spoke with was Coach John Hackelman. He wanted me to have you bring up a story where Glover Teixeira was having a fight, and there was a guy that went into Junior Dos Santos' dressing room who wasn't supposed to be there.
who actually told me that he can go in there because Dana White sent him in there. Or somebody sent him in there, or no, not Dana White sent him, but he was with him or something
Right.
crazy. And this other guy decides he's gonna follow him. And I told him, I said, you know what? My name is not on that door,
Right.
but I can guarantee you, if you walk in there, it's gonna get stamped on the back of your pants. And that was,
Nice.
well, I said that a little nicer, just now than I know. Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
Sure.
Wow, wow,
All
wow.
right. The last guy I spoke to, and I hope you don't get mad at me for calling you this, but he told me it would be okay. He
Chocolate.
said, I'm going to let you figure out who it was. I'm supposed to refer to you as sexual chocolate for the rest
Chocolate.
of this
I said
interview.
chocolate.
Randy says hello and much love.
Didn't I say chocolate?
Sexual chocolate. Yep.
Whoa. Can you do me a favor?
Sure. I'll do anything, Bert.
I want you to print that and send that to me.
Okay.
Whatever
I
you can do with the name. Take your time.
I will.
I want that. I want that. I want that.
Absolutely. I will
Wow.
absolutely do that for you. I'm not the most tech savvy guy in the world, so it may take me a minute or two. I think I can probably just take a picture of it and email it to you.
What you can do at some point when you get time, just type it
Okay.
and send it to me if you get time,
Okay. Yeah,
or
I'll do that.
or whatever. But wow. Thank you,
I hope
Mike.
you enjoyed that, Bert. It took a lot of
That
work
was
compiling that. And I would have
oh,
one more name for you. About 10 minutes into our interview, Sean Shirk messaged me, and he was going to give. I'll be able to tell you afterwards what Sean said, but he was going to add to it also. I just didn't get it from him in time.
wow. Sean Shirt.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. And all those guys that you talked about right there. Mark Coleman was, and it's in the book,
Mm-hmm.
Mark Coleman and Kevin Randleman tore up a bathroom that cost us $6,000.
That's all.
Now you got to
Just
read the
one.
book. You got to read the book to find out what they did to tear that damn bathroom up.
Awesome.
That cost the UFC $6,000. And I'll never forget that with him and Kevin Randleman. And that is my lasting memory of Kevin Randleman, which is a memory to last you,
Yeah.
forever. But that is my lasting memory of Kevin Randleman. Wow. Wow.
And there
Wow.
were a few more guys that I talked to that just, kind of said, tell him hi. He was a great influence. He actually said he didn't think that you would remember him.
Who?
But his name's Dustin Paig.
Hell yeah.
The disciple. Okay. He
Oh,
said
yeah.
there's no way he'll remember me, but if he does, tell him I said hi and he was amazing and I love Bert.
I only remember, and tell me if I'm right. I remember his nickname was the disciple. This disciple
Yes.
was that.
Yes. Yep.
That's how I remember that.
Yep. Okay.
And also his workout stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I
Wow.
told him when he said that he was afraid that you probably wouldn't remember him. I told
Uh-huh.
him that just the research I've done on you, I imagine you remember every fighter you ever came into contact with. It
Yes,
doesn't seem
yes.
like it's in your character to forget them.
I remember because they were so, and all I have to do is see the name.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I have to do. I don't remember because I told you
Right.
403 fights, 8,069 walks. That's legitimate, son. That is a
Yeah.
legitimate number. Imagine walking 8,069 fighters from a dressing room to the ring, the cage, the octagon, or the dojo. Remember, that's a big number.
Yeah.
But that number is real. Over since 1983, that's a big number.
Mm-hmm.
That's a
Yeah.
big number. And you just named 13.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you. I
Yeah, no problem.
appreciate your time, you know, and I appreciate you having me on, especially during the time that I'm in the process of selling my book.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't mind, I'm gonna give that shameless plug.
Yeah, do it.
You know, that's being Burt Watson, written by Burt Watson, now on
Mm-hmm.
Amazon. And you know, the thing here is that I I I, I don't just want to sell this book. I want to teach this book
Mm-hmm.
because there's so much in here that I learned from everybody that I touched.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much in here that I learned from each and every fighter. All of those 8,069, and some of them I put in here that I worked
Mm-hmm.
with, but I learned all that through my experience, you know, and came up with the focus of mindset, game plan, and commitment.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because when a fighter gets ready to fight a fight,
Mm-hmm.
guess what the three things that he needs to have? Mindset,
Yep.
game plan, and
Commitment.
commitment. If you don't have those three things,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't have to necessarily be in that order, you can put a game plan and then do your mindset, and then the last thing is commit yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to have those three things to succeed. And I've learned that not only in sports, but in life.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
You've got to have those things in life to succeed.
Mm-hmm.
So that says the same things you need to succeed in sports, you need to succeed in life, and you got to have those things. And if you have those things, you will not fail.
Yes,
All
sir.
blessings. All blessings.
I don't have any more questions for you, Bert. That's it. That
Okay.
was amazing, man. Thank you so much for coming on here. I'm sure you hear it all the time. I'm honored. I truly am, man. I've had goosebumps this entire time. Thank you so much. I really, really do appreciate it.
I appreciate you, Mike. Thanks for having me on. And guess what? You got it from Burt Watson, and you got the truth
That's awesome, man.
all night long. All right, my man.
All right, Bert.
Appreciate
Have a good one.
appreciate you. Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you. Bye
Appreciate
bye.
you, baby. Peace.